I know there were challenges between your mom and your dad, and they got divorced. And I actually have a friend from Northern Ireland as well, from Newry, and that happened to her. And her father lived in the same village with a new family, and that was devastating to her. That she see him across the road, and he wouldn't even acknowledge her. Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
And I'm part of a bereavement support group, and
Okay.
people have discussed the differences
Yeah.
because it's not just about loss through death, but there's loss through a situation like that.
Yes, exactly.
And when you lose the person through death, there's a process that you go through,
Yeah.
and it's not always easy, and it doesn't always happen in a set time scale, but there is kind of like, usually, not always, but a closure, a sense of closure. Whereas if you see the person all the time, they're there in your space, you cannot there is no closure. You can't kind of put it to bed, lay it to rest. Yeah. It's just coming up in your face again and again and again. How difficult, how challenging, how painful that is. And particularly if you're the child. If you're the parent, to some degree, that was your choice.
Yeah.
Most of the time, that the partnership, the relationship ended. But when you're the child and you just feel like they didn't want me, they've left me.
Yeah.
No matter how much that may be said, the other parent or both parents might tell you that's not true. On some level, most children do still feel, and because they're children and they need to make sense of it and they need to understand, they may blame themselves. It must have been me. I wasn't good enough.
Yeah, in some way you failed to be. Yeah.
I didn't keep my parents together, or it's because of me that they split up, or it's because of me that my dad has left. He didn't want to spend time with me. He didn't love me. So I went through all of those.
Yeah. One of the things that really resonated, and I really felt your pain, was when your dad said to you, "Stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about." Do you remember that time?
Oh, that wasn't one time. That was several times. And yes, I remember it very clearly. And it's interesting you pick up on that one, because my editor, when she read that part of the book, she came back to me and said, I don't know who it was, but somebody said that to her too. I think it was another generational thing.
Yeah.
I think that was something that maybe a lot of parents would have said at that time. And also, again, was that something that my dad's parents said to him? Is that where he got that phrase?
No, of course. There's no blame in any of the inquiry.
No.
But the result for a child is stuff down your feelings. Don't be authentic. Don't express how you feel.
It's not safe to express how you feel.
Yeah. It's like locking you into a prison of loneliness, aloneness, isolation. Never intended, I'm sure, because he probably was just repeating what he had been taught. This is the right way to teach your children. Emotions aren't good, and I mean, men suffer from this belief as well, terribly, because they're locked into that as much as women are, that it's not okay to feel and to express your feelings. But I think the resistance is so great then that it becomes a problem, where actually just expressing is a form of letting the energy flow rather than putting a damper on it, right?
Emotions supposedly are energy in motion.
Yeah, exactly.
Emotion. But when they can't be, we can't process them. And it's like traditional Chinese medicine, they talk about your qi, the flow of your energy, and it being blocked.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what that is. You've got this energy that needs to be expressed, this emotion that needs to be expressed, and the expression is part of the processing. And if you can't, if you're holding it in, then where does it go? It has nowhere to go.
It's like a pressure cooker, though. So is that not what the troubles were? Potentially, the pressure cooker of repression, of rage, anger, which is usually vulnerability without a voice. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you talk about resistance. To me, resistance is fear. Why do we resist? We resist because we don't feel safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what is that all about? How can we address that?
And resisting your own self. Resisting your own self-expression.
Because it doesn't feel safe.
Yeah.
And Gabor Mate talks about when we are very small, we have two primal needs.
Yeah.
We need authenticity and we need attachment.
Yeah.
And
this is a very important part of the book as well. Yeah.
It will win every time when you're a little child, because without your attachment to your caregiver, how do you feed yourself? How do you clothe yourself? How do you keep a roof over your head? You can't. When you're that small, you can't. So if your parent says something like, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about, that doesn't make sense. I'll cry more. I thought you wanted me to stop. But if they say that to you and you think, but then obviously my crying, so again, you're blaming yourself. It's me, I'm crying. That makes him angry.
Yeah.
And we know now that I cannot make anybody angry.
Well, but not everybody knows that, Robin. Not everyone knows that.
The message that I received was, it's my fault that you're angry because I'm crying.
I control your emotions. I control your emotions.
And that makes you angry, you won't love me anymore.
Yeah.
I won't have that attachment anymore.
Yeah. Terrifying.
So if my expression, my authenticity is putting this attachment at risk, I have to drop it. I have to push that down. I have to suppress it. I cannot risk being me, because then I will lose your love.
Yeah.
Since I already feel that it's all hanging by a thread.
Wow. But look, do you think you're alone in this? To me,
no,
of course not. But to me, this is, so I'm going to take a broader canvas now to look at this issue, because it's very central to every human being's experience, I think. The journey from resistance through the mind's interpretation of what reality is through storytelling, which is not the truth, but is the story coming from the child's view of what it means. And then we carry that into adulthood. And everybody is really, all the adults are really children dressed up, right? So they're still children at heart, but there is a spiritual quest within that to go beyond the storytelling and the storyteller, to find the truth that was always the truth even then, which I think is the gift of this book as well. To go deeper in understanding, to go beyond reaction and resistance, being a victim of circumstance, to being a victor through understanding and living authentically as the gift at the end of the journey, which, if people are lucky enough to read your book and to begin this process of self-exploration, they can consciously choose to leave the story that's disempowering them behind, and to live in truth and live in love, not fear.